Could Sacabambaspis survive Subnautica 2? Proteus is an alien moon replete with dangerous biomes, swift predators, titanic monsters, and a mind-warping virus that controls the entire world and accelerates the evolution of the moon's native fauna as well as its visitors. Sacabambaspis was a foot-long, jawless, armored fish that lived in the Ordovician period of Earth's ancient past. Can a population of this little fish survive in a big alien pond? And how would they all evolve to suit their new surroundings? Welcome to Proteus. This ocean moon is the focal point of Subnautica 2, and brings new biomes and creatures to the crafting survival franchise. The moon is almost entirely covered by water, a medium that makes the distribution of the dominant Proteiavirus incredibly easy. This virus acts as an agent for horizontal gene transfer between all organisms on the moon. Essentially, adaptations and traits that would normally take millennia or even millions of years to gain can be swapped almost instantaneously between animals and plants. These changes are facilitated via large tree-like structures called angel combs, offshoots of the gigantic Titan-class organism that towers over the horizon. Simply touching an angel comb for a couple seconds can give you abilities like heat resistance or the capacity to digest the otherwise incompatible alien life. And thank goodness for that, or this video would be really short and really boring. Another factor that massively improves the video is the involvement of Mr. 42, the 3D modeler who created the Sacabambaspis Spec Evo models and has worked with the channel before. He's got some awesome Spec Evo stuff over on his own channel, so please go check his work out. We'll be ranking Sacabambaspis from 1 to 10 in 3 categories: how it navigates the environment of Proteus, whether it can find reliable food sources, and how it confronts predators and competition. Then, after its final score, we'll go into how the little fish utilizes the Proteiavirus to adapt to its new world. This video will, by its nature, include an overview of Subnautica 2's Proteus moon ecosystem, biome by biome, as of June 2026. The game is still in early access and thus will significantly expand for future videos in the series, but there's already a ton of territory and fauna to work with. Let's get started by examining Sacabambaspis itself, the champion of Earth, chosen by the benevolent Vividen Corporation for this episode of Tyrant Prime's favorite game show. Sacabambaspis lived during the Middle Ordovician period, and is known from dozens of specimens across multiple continents, demonstrating that this tadpole-shaped goober lived for nearly 12 million years. While its only fin was that found on its tail, making it rather slow and unwieldy, Sacabambaspis focused on defense. Its head was covered in dermal plates that protected it from attackers and also contained lateral lines for detecting water vibrations caused by prey and predators, which would help counter the fact that their eyes were set in the very front of their faces. It was essentially an Ordovician Roomba, swimming around slowly and vacuuming up small organisms with suction feeding. Emphasis on small organisms. Sacabambaspis itself was only a third of a meter, or 13 inches long, with much of that being its skinny tail. It would make a nice aquarium fish to keep in your office, unlike the prehistoric murder death titans we've previously tossed onto 4546b or Pandora. Tyrant Prime likes to switch things up every now and again, you know? True to tradition, we'll plop 100 Sacabambaspis into the Shallows biome where you begin the game. The Shallows is a gorgeous, brightly colored region replete with feathery anemone-like aliens, mounds of coral, glowing kelp, sponges, and oxygen-producing tunicates. It's like an underwater garden, and even has tunnel systems beneath the surface to add even more territory to explore. The entire population of Sacabambaspis will become infected by the Proteiavirus immediately upon appearing by the life pod, which in this case is a good thing. A nearby angel comb will take advantage of their infection and compel them to swim to it, granting them the ability to digest native fauna. But what are the menu options in the first place? Sacabambaspis is only about the size of a small cat after all and has no real weaponry. It's limited to suction feeding on small to microscopic organisms, and it's one of the tiniest critters in the Shallows. Periscopic clown crabs may seem small and cute, and they certainly are cute, but approaching them will help you realize they're also about the size of a cat. The first-person POV in Subnautica games makes all the animals appear much smaller than they actually are, and that trend continues with Subnautica 2. Clown crabs are much too large for any Sacabambaspis to consider eating, but it's unlikely that their claws would be able to pierce the strange fish's armor in turn. Blue moons frequent the Shallows, darting back and forth between coral formations, but are bigger than Sacabambaspis. The same goes for harvest moons and half moons, the latter of which mature into the wax moon, an angelfish-like animal nearly as large as a human. However, the half moon contains the key for Sacabambaspis' survival, not in and of itself, but in its PDA entry, which states that it chiefly subsists on a diet of plankton. Suddenly, the fact that Sacabambaspis is surrounded by fish at least its own size isn't really an issue. Its suction feeding and small size turn into advantages, letting it find nutrition in the water column itself and not relying on any particular area within the Shallows. Another potential food source is the water slug, a rubbery creature that hosts freshwater and highly nutritious plankton within its bulb. In the event that Sacabambaspis can produce powerful enough suction to rupture the bulb, they might treat these animals like gushers. I will say, however, that their nearly comparable size makes such an outcome unlikely. And there are more animals it will need to compete with or run away from. Geordies are four-finned omnivores that propel themselves with biological hydrojets and eat small organisms with their hardened oral cones, including algae that Sacabambaspis might be interested in. Four eyes are two fish in one, paired up predators with sharp jaws that would be much faster than our Ordovician couch potato and are large enough to bite Sacabambaspis in half. We'll need to stay lower in the water column to avoid these agile carnivores. The issue is that down by the bottom of the shallows we encounter sand spears, meter-long ambush predators with edible-looking lures, capable of extreme speed when launching themselves at victims. Their powerful spiked limbs can wrap around the much smaller Sacabambaspis, and they'd have the mechanical advantage to pierce their armor. Sand spears are especially common in cave systems, making them less safe havens and more the underwater equivalent of the backrooms. Hammerheads may be herbivores, but that doesn't mean they're not incredibly dangerous. These cow-sized, heavily armored creatures are very territorial. If you ignore their threat display, they will let you know they're upset by ramming into you with hundreds of pounds of body armor. They're living battering rams and even smash against domes of solid coral. Hopefully, Sacabambaspis can stay under their radar because they're not surviving a hit from a hammerhead. Or a bite from a nibbler mango. And no, I'm not talking about the delicious fruit. The term mango here is derived from the Maori word for shark. Nibbler mangoes have durable teeth and jaws and eat anything they can fit inside their mouths. Given they're the size of a tiger shark, that's a long list of potential food options. They travel and hunt in groups of 2 to 3 and are typically aggressive given their unending hunger. Fortunately, they tend to favor open water, so Sacabambaspis may be able to avoid them by modifying its own behavior. Perhaps doing so will also limit encounters with the dreaded marrow breach. I have to be honest, I love this design. Marrow breaches take the best parts of placoderms and sharks and put them into a single, sleek, menacing animal. 7 meters of muscle, sharpened bone jaws, and wicked teeth. Marrow breaches are very aggressive and will tear through anything large passing into their territory, often patrolling coral domes or other outcrops. Sacabambaspis might be small enough to avoid their attention, but it's best not to risk it. Staying in lower elevation areas, even with the risk of sand spears, is likely the way to go. There's one more animal to cover that can occasionally appear in the shallows. Actually, it can spawn in any biome, although it is quite rare. I'm referring to the deep-wing brooder, a massive migratory leviathan that superficially bears some resemblance to the marrow breach, but is from a completely different evolutionary lineage. It's a filter feeder with a wingspan that varies from 21 to 33 meters, but their enormous beak indicates that it might also have the capacity for durophagy, or feeding on hard-shelled prey like coral crabs. Deep-wing brooders typically travel in groups of 2 to 3 individuals, roaming the borders of the void and depositing their eggs in huge clouds, along with decoy fatty deposits to prevent predators from eating said eggs. Those fatty deposits would be a nutritional boon to Sacabambaspis, which would be able to feed on them with suction and obtain huge amounts of calories at a time. The shallows don't seem like too bad of a place to set up shop, but inevitably some brave fishy pioneers would stray into the Dolerite Spires area. This biome is nowhere near as productive as the shallows, but isn't entirely desolate either. Water slugs litter the ground, and sand spears and hammerheads provide a significant threat of harm. Surge jellies appear for the first time, floating and bobbing in the open water and zapping any animals that get too close. The lack of half-moons and their relatives here may imply a low density of plankton, which Sacabambaspis relies on for the majority of its nutrients. Deep-wing brooders might pass through every now and again, depositing their fatty egg decoys, but as previously mentioned, their appearances are rare. Coral crabs certainly aren't on the menu, given how they're the size of small houses, but fortunately don't appear to be hunting animals in Sacabambaspis' size range either. They're detritivores, digging through sand for small food items that their mandibles can suitably process. They would be the biggest animal in the biome if it weren't for the monstrous Great Jaw, a 62-meter-tall, oyster-like leviathan with a hair-triggered lure in the center of its titanic mouth. Great jaws have eyes on the insides of their shells and will close their jaws quickly to trap prey that fall for the lure, digesting them with powerful acid. Between that potential threat and the low availability of food, the Dolerite Spires seem far from ideal. On to the Plateaus, where big friendly jellies, behemoth finger-legged jellies, sprawl across large rocks and process chemical nutrients with their long limbs. These gigantic chemoautotrophs should be harmless to Sacabambaspis, but also don't provide any relevant resources. Water slugs are here, because they're nearly everywhere, and the presence of schools examples of mirror half-moons and fluttertails indicates a robust plankton population that should also be able to sustain Sacabambaspis without too much issue. Hammerheads offer up their aggression as their only contribution to the community, while sand spears lurk in the sea floor and marrow breaches are the undisputed apex predators. The best strategy here may be to swim close to the ground beneath schools of fish so the marrow breaches can be distracted, vacuuming up the plankton they miss. They'll also need to be careful not to get caught up in the many riptides that crisscross the area, powerful currents that would easily overpower the little fish. While close by, the graveyard is a terrible place for Sacabambaspis to enter. For one, the temperature is extraordinarily high with peaks at over 200 degrees Celsius in deeper volcanic areas. That's uninhabitable without special adaptations that can only be obtained by cleansing corrupted angel combs back by the shallows. Sacabambaspis, as iconic as it is, doesn't have the knowledge, tech, or thumbs to build the equipment required to clear out that corruption, and even if it did, the fast, aggressive bloom parasites would make mincemeat out of it. It's a pity, really. The graveyard has its own sort of Stygian beauty, with shadows and volcanic glows blending together in the heated currents. Were the temperature not an issue, it would be at least livable. Half-moons feed on the plankton present here. However, the extremely fast, stabby houndgars accompany marrow breaches in a mutualistic group hunting lifestyle and present deadly threats even to human explorers. We also have to mention that the alpha marrow breach lurks around here, a 20-meter monster that can fit nearly an entire tadpole submersible into its devastating jaws. This is not the place. The Necrolay Hills, so named for their enormous anemone forests, are pretty chill. The Necrolay themselves don't appear to sting creatures that touch them, so they could provide temporary shelter if a Sacabambaspis needs to hide itself from a four-eye or hammerhead. Half-moons and wax-moons are the beating heart of the planktivore web here, which should mean that there's enough food to go around. Periscopic clown crabs may provide some minor additional competition, but they can't swim. Sacabambaspis can. The caves and trenches of the Necrolay Hills are home to the peaceful Jetacaris, a 3-meter-tall armored invertebrate that resembles a fusion between a tripod camera, a giant squirt gun, and a crab. These bottom-feeding detritivores are excellent parents and carry their young on their backs, including those unrelated to them. They shouldn't bother Sacabambaspis, but their feeding might stir up plankton near the sea floor that the Ordovician fish could happily take advantage of. This is a good biome. We like this biome. The lead zone, I'm sorry to say, is not a good biome, at least not for a small suction-feeding armored fish. There are no half-moons here, indicating a lack of plankton, with notable fauna including sand spears, which are bad, hammerheads, which are bad, and coral crabs, which from the perspective of Sacabambaspis are neutral. Deep-wing brooders pass through here on occasion, raining decoy eggs down like manna from watery heaven, but aren't a reliable food source in isolation. A few brave Sacabambaspis may attempt to colonize the Sparse Plains, emphasis on attempt. For one, there's no food here. Two, the reason the entire area has been picked clean is a collector leviathan, a 108-meter-long alien cephalopod that actively pursues even small organisms in its territory. It's believed by Altera to be a deep-sea predator that's come to the surface. Whether that was in pursuit of large armored prey in shallow water, or fleeing an even more dangerous threat in the abyss, is unknown. Whatever its true origin, the Collector is a formidable apex predator, at twice the length of Planet 4546b's Reaper Leviathan. Scaling up from a 1.5 meter, 50 kilogram Earth Humboldt squid indicates that a typical 108 meter collector leviathan weighs in the order of 18.6 million kilos, or 18,600 metric tons. That calculation is going to be very rough, of course, given the proportional differences between the two, so if anybody has access to a more accurate weight or the collector's actual in-game model, let me know. Size aside, its weaponry is not to be underestimated. The collector's arms end with grasping claws the size of cars, and it emits a stunning sonic blast when beginning a hunt, giving it an edge in pursuit as if it weren't already swimming at freeway speeds. To give some perspective, the Collector Leviathan can easily keep pace with the upgraded Tadpole Submersible, which moves at around 10 meters a second. There is no chance on Proteus that Sacabambaspis would be able to avoid being gobbled up like armored popcorn. Realistically, the fledgling Sacabambaspis population would stay restricted to the western half of the map, with the Sparse Plains serving as a biogeographical barrier that none of them would be able to cross. With how fast, curious, and hungry the Collector Leviathan is, hunting slow, cumbersome Arandaspids really would be like shooting fish in a barrel. But on the very off chance that a breeding population did make it across this deadly no man's land, how would they fare in the abandoned alien fortress of Karakorum? Karakorum is divided into 4 main areas for our purposes: again with the caveat that Subnautica 2 is still in the very beginning stages of early access as of this video's production. The observatory island should be a little more forgiving than the Sparse Plains, although it's also deeper at 210 meters. The 5-meter tall Serathecans wobble their way through the water here, existing as largely inoffensive filter feeders that even Alterran scanner tech can't fully comprehend. They're toxic, not that it matters for this particular video. Water slugs dot the terrain here as well, although as mentioned previously, their bulbs are likely too durable for simple suction feeding to pop open. Surge jellies drift beneath the waves along with our old friends, half moons, wax moons, and blue moons, heralding a steady food supply of plankton. Hoverthorns are fast, needle-shaped fish that have an unknown diet, manipulating electromagnetic currents via the crystals in their body in order to move through the water. Finally, Numas appear to have descended from some sort of kelp-dwelling ancestor, if their ill-suited camouflage is anything to go by. Overall, the observatory island is mostly harmless, although the large carnivorous twin Siderays can absolutely be problematic. The Root Canyon is next, and it's a doozy. At 364 to 750 meters deep, it's far out of the comfort zone of a shallow water suction feeder without clear adaptations for dark and deep water. Sure, there's food. Blue moons, harvest moons, half moons, and wax moons indicate that well enough. But flash slugs are annoying and bright, and twin Siderays are 9-meter predators built like sharks that can deal damage to prey and threats alike with superconductive mucus attacks. They're also incredibly goofy if viewed from the front, something that made them my wife's favorite Subnautica 2 creature. She doesn't play, but she saw it over my shoulder and thought they were awesome. I agree, the creature design in this game is just phenomenal. Anyway, the Root Canyon's severe depth is far from ideal for an animal not adapted to such high water pressure, and Sacabambaspis would be too exposed to predation while navigating the open concept living room. The power plant is the second to last Karakorum area for now, and our third to last biome. This vast structure, built and then left by the ancient alien organism that once ruled Proteus, has become a landmark for multiple aquatic species, including Serathecans, twin Siderays, jelly rings, flash slugs, and the dreaded 11-meter needlers. Needler mangoes are extremely fast predators that fire biological spears from their mouths, rapidly reconstructing the projectiles from organic materials and launching them repeatedly to impale prey. There's a nest of needlers close by the power plant that hosts enough to make the area a nightmare for any Sacabambaspis that may try to settle in. The lack of half moons doesn't necessarily mean there's no plankton, but it does mean that an animal trying to fill a similar niche to Sacabambaspis isn't able to succeed here. It's best to write off the power plant for now. Surely the ominous-sounding metal farms will be more suitable for Earth life, right? If you pointed at the screen and said, "No, you idiot," you'd be correct. While they're not as abyssally deep as the Root Canyon, they're still 470 meters below the surface of the water, well below where Sacabambaspis is adapted to be living and hunting. Hoverthorns dart around down here, along with twin Siderays, but neither of them will be much of a problem in comparison to the voracious Epicurean. This pufferfish-shaped carnivore is the size of a Honda Odyssey and has jaws wide enough to engulf a pod of Sacabambaspis in a single bite. Epicureans are endlessly hungry and highly aggressive as a result, a condition only worsened when they're infected by the aptly named tongue thieves. Tongue thieves are arthropod-like parasites that rip out Epicurean tongues and replace them, blocking the Epicurean's ability to feel full with chemical agents and driving them to manic overeating episodes. Epicureans turn into unholy terrors under these conditions, attacking everything around them. Since there's no real food to draw the Sacabambaspis to these depths, and there are large and angry carnivores, maybe it will be better if they just swim upwards towards the surface in search of better climbs. However, that's where the game's second collector leviathan lurks, clacking its arcade machine claws and wiggling its facial feelers while its horrifying yet epic theme music plays in the background. They cooked on the music for this game, by the way. This video isn't sponsored, but dang, go play Subnautica 2. Even the early access is incredible so far. Only one biome remains before we give our little fishy friend its final Thrive Arena live score: the Void. Beyond the Crimson Wall, where early access development cuts off, where building habitats is prohibited, is a vast blue nothingness. Yet nothingness is not the same as emptiness. The Void is home to the lightning-fast, bloodthirsty Shiver Leviathan, a horrifying beaked monstrosity with spiked wings that can outpace you no matter the upgrades you make to your tadpole. The 90-meter female acts as the aircraft carrier, with a male Shiver Leviathan resting on each of her wings. The males lurch forward when pursuing prey, swiftly overtaking you and gulping you down as if you were nothing more than an afterthought. Shivers immediately sense whenever any life form enters their domain, and they can appear in a heartbeat, killing and eating anything that doesn't simply turn around and go back past the Crimson Wall. Optimal foraging theory predicts that Shiver Leviathan shouldn't logically care about a fish that's less than a 200th the length of the female. Pursuing such a creature couldn't logically be worth the energy. However, their sheer aggression mandates them to attack prey that energetically wouldn't be ideal. we award Sacabambaspis an acceptable 6 out of 10 for home. There definitely are shallow areas with high productivity that it can set up camp in, like the shallows themselves and the Necrolay Hills. Other high resource biomes like the Observatory Island are in deeper water, which acts as an environmental limitation, and some simply are too dang hot, like the volcanic graveyard. There's long-term toxicity from the high levels of heavy metals in the water of Proteus, which we don't know of an angel comb adaptation for as of this video's recording, so we may need to handwave that to keep the spec evo interesting. As for hunger, that is simultaneously a 0 and a 7. The 0 stems from the life on Proteus not being digestible normally by Earth animals. We absolutely have to get an angel comb adaptation in order for Sacabambaspis to be able to eat at all. Fortunately, the Proteavirus infection causes Macefield syndrome, which leads its victims to angel combs and encourages them to engage in horizontal gene transfer. That will let Sacabambaspis start getting calories early on. There are plenty of biomes rich in plankton, which will form the backbone of its diet, and deep-wing brooder egg bombing events can supplement that. Hanger is not quite as peachy at a 4. Anywhere there's enough plankton to support a half-moon population, you'll find, well, a half-moon population, and they're faster than Sacabambaspis. Blue moons, harvest moons, and wax moons likely cut into that resource pie as well, providing stiff competition. On the predation side, sand spears make the seafloor dangerous, but are fortunately fairly rare. Four eyes aren't aggressive all the time, but are known to occasionally attack animals that stare at them for too long, which Sacabambaspis would 100% do by accident. Look at those soulful little eyes. Nibbler mangoes and marrow breaches provide some of the biggest pressure, with their aggression, speed, and armor-piercing weaponry making them the perfect predators for our tiniest rapid friend. The two collector leviathans in the early access map are one-animal exterminators, capable of wiping out entire populations if given the inclination. Needler mangoes inhabit areas that Sacabambaspis wouldn't prefer to begin with, but their speed and ranged weaponry provide nearly insurmountable obstacles for such slow suction feeders. Then, of course, there's the Shiver Leviathan, because hunting in packs was a behavior that just had to be given to Leviathan-class apex predators. I'm not actually complaining. I love the Shiver Leviathan, and seeing it appear out of the azure gloom with terrifying boss music for the first time was one of my favorite Subnautica experiences. It would not be a favorite experience for Sacabambaspis, though, to be clear. That core memory, if it survives, would be one of bladder-emptying terror. That means we're looking at an overall Thrive Read and Alive score of 5.6. Assuming that Sacabambaspis can obtain digestive adaptations from the angel comb soon after arriving in the shallows. Without that crucial factor, its score drops to a pitiful 3.3, well below the required 5 for maintaining a breeding population. Sacabambaspis' diet isn't very demanding as a planktivorous small organism, which turned out to be crucial for its survival, but its slow, awkward build means it would never be truly competitive in a world of large and fast alien fish. They wouldn't swarm the map by any means, but if you came back after a few generations, you'd expect to see a decent amount surviving the shallows and Necrolay Hills, with a few stragglers on the fringes of other biomes. That, however, is discounting the horizontal gene transfer that the Proteavirus brings to the table. Suddenly, being able to evolve and adapt at the same rate as bacteria that can just give successful traits to one another on the spot opens up a virtually endless corridor of doors that Sacabambaspis can open, all thanks to the hospitality of a hopelessly infected planet. The virus appears to carry within it the genes of every living thing on Proteus, mishmashing new combinations with each interaction. Let's see what that could cook up, given time and selective pressure. The first descendant of the original alien fish is now known affectionately as the pipe cleaner. These long, wispy animals may appear to be algal growths or elongated tumors on the dorsal surface of deep-wing brooders at first glance, but they're actually janitors for the enormous leviathans. Pipe cleaners have increased their size relative to their diminutive ancestors, reaching half a meter long when fully grown, and have wider mouths, better able to act as suction engines for feeding and locomotion. They specialize in feeding off the oil droplets of deep-wing brooders, living on their backs and attaching themselves by their powerful suction cup mouths to the brooders' armor plating. Pipe cleaners hang like upside-down garden eels, walking with their mouths across the surface of the deep-wing brooders and eating whatever they find, from oil to parasites to algae. This gives them plenty of nutrition, protection from predators that don't want to tangle with deep-wing brooders, and they perform a cleaning service for their hosts, although removing the decoy eggs can be annoying. How sustainable this partnership will be long-term remains to be seen. We're still in early access after all, but so far things seem to be going okay. Slug crushers are exactly what they sound like. These fish have adopted the crushing jaws characteristic of nibbler mangoes and marrow breaches, with added flexibility in the skin surrounding their powerful biting muscles. Their sharp teeth and grasping mandibles have one specific target in mind: water slugs. The rubbery bags of plankton hold critical nutrients that slug crushers snatch and burst open, bringing back the gushers analogy from earlier. The niche was surprisingly empty, which has let slug crushers spread across virtually every biome with water slugs in it as their sole predator. They metabolize the rubbery covering of their victims to serve as additional protection, thickening their own dermal armor and creating an electromagnetic insulating layer. That particular adaptation allows some populations of larger slug crushers to even go after surge jellies, tearing open their soft flesh and ignoring their electric attacks. Other Proteavirus-induced routes don't end so happily for the fish. Meet the Grinning Nightmare, a version of Sacabambaspis that's been infected and co-opted by the bloom parasite. These 2-meter carnivores are riddled with viral blooms, allowing the virus to directly control their behavior and physical development. The bloom has weaponized the otherwise happy Bob Ross of prehistoric fish and uses them as bodyguards in order to protect bloom cankers, infected angel combs that are causing significant ecological harm to the world tree that rules Proteus. Grinning nightmares are far faster than the Ordovician pioneer stock they're descended from, with sharp long fins and strong tails. Their skull structure was completely refurbished, giving them functional jaws that split their heads in half when attacking, and sharp iron-edged teeth that can cut through most forms of biological armor. Whenever an infected angel comb is approached, grinning nightmares let out a hissing sound before attacking that eerily resembles human laughter. We theorize that some Alteran pioneer genes may have been co-opted for this parasite bodyguard, which raises unsettling questions about their cognition. The corruption of the bloom wasn't done with Sacabambaspis, however. The Proteavirus continued to manipulate the bloom parasites that it had created from alien stock, apparently pleased with the grinning nightmares that served its purposes, as pleased as a virus can be anyway. As the cankers continued to spread along Titan rock bores in deeper water, near to where the collector leviathans originated from, which will soon be a playable biome by the way, cannot wait, the bloom developed its deadliest bodyguard yet, the Smile Leviathan. Designed to counter the irritants and cures of spaceborne visitors, the 40-meter Smile Leviathan is merciless, silent, and freakishly intelligent. Memories and knowledge from previous Alteran pioneers that bonded with angel combs rush through its mind, giving it their tactics, strategies, and thought processes. Fear is its weapon and stealth is its shield. As its name indicates, its great maw is locked in an eternal smile that welcomes invaders to their deaths, rushing towards them in the darkness. What were your thoughts on how Sacabambaspis performed on Proteus, and which spec Evo fish was your favorite? I'm thoroughly enjoying what we have of Subnautica 2 so far and can't wait to toss more prehistoric critters into its vast oceans. The channel has plenty of non-Subnautica spec Evo and eco swap content as well if you're interested, and if you'd like to further support what I do, make sure to join the channel and to check out my epic paleo fantasy Extinction Obsidian Dawn, which is linked in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. 42, whose Methania spec Evo project is on a different level. I'm the Vividen, and I'll see you the next time Tyrant Prime wishes to manipulate the ecology of an unsuspecting alien world.